Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, consumer investor shares her path from a non-target school to breaking into the equity research group at a bulge bracket bank. We learn how she landed a key sophomore summer internship, why she was so attracted to equity research, how she eventually made the transition to another bulge bracket bank in order to get into investment banking. Listen to hear how COVID changed everything, what she did with her promotion to associate, and what main tool she used to help her navigate the private equity recruiting process. Okay, consumer investor, thanks so much for joining the Wall Street Oasis podcast.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate your time. Excited to be here.
Likewise. So if you could just give the listeners a short summary of your bio, that'd be a great place to start.
Sure. So I went to a non-target school, studied finance. My junior year, I had an internship in equity research. Joined there full-time, covering the retail space. After 2 years working there, moved over to a different bank in the investment banking group covering similar sector. I got promoted from analyst to associate after about a year and a half, and then made the move over to a middle market private equity firm focused also in the consumer space.
Great. So from non-target to bulge bracket equity research to bulge bracket investment banking to PE. It's kind of the summary.
Yeah.
So let's start all the way back kind of in undergrad, or, how did you build up towards that summer internship in equity research? You were a finance major, so was finance always on the horizon for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it makes sense to back up just a little bit.
Sure.
So when I was thinking about where I wanted to go to college, I kind of always knew I wanted to do something in business or finance from pretty early age. I actually started investing in the stock market when I was 13. For my birthday, my grandpa had given me some money, and I went to the mall and I saw what stores were busy. So, at the time, everyone was wearing UGG boots and buying their first iPhone. So those are the stocks that I invested in. So I kind of caught that bug kind of early. But from there, I knew
was
I
was
wanted
UGGs
to.
publicly traded back there, or was
Yes,
it?
so it was owned by Decker.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then
So
Apple,
it was,
obviously, was
yeah,
a great buy if you held on to it.
yeah. But it was fun for me, but there was definitely not a lot of technical analysis behind my investment theses. So when I was thinking about where I want to go to college, I wanted to pursue something in finance and business, but also really wanted something that was entrepreneurial and very social and helped me grow on that aspect. So where I went to school had a finance major and also an entrepreneurial minor, which was a lot of fun for me. Was definitely able to combine all my passions.
Mm-hmm.
And through on-campus recruiting, my sophomore year, I actually got an internship at a large healthcare company in their corporate finance kind of rotational program. It was a junior year internship, but it's kind of able to really present a good story of why it was a good fit for me and my passion in healthcare at the time. And I think that was my first really good experience in the professional world.
How did you get into that? How did you convince them to take you?
Yeah.
were you was it kind of like you networked and then they like made an exception to interview you, or was it more of you just dropped your resume anyways, even though it said juniors only?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a combination of both. So it was for juniors only, but at my school had a finance forum for women, and the hiring manager was there. She was an alum of my school, and I'd met her. Didn't make a super strong connection or anything, but when I knew she would be interviewing me, I did my homework pretty well, and I found out some deals that she had worked on and projects she was involved in, and was able to just really have a great connection with my hiring manager. And she was at the end of the day, the voice at the table saying, we got to hire her.
Was
Um,
that before the interview, or was that kind of like you had made the connection before, or that was after you'd been granted an interview?
yeah, no. So I had met her before the interview, and then when
Oh,
I
okay.
found out she was interviewing me,
How did you meet her before the interview? How did you
it
even
was
know to
it
do
was
that?
like an alum
Oh, okay.
forum at on campus. Just a ton of women studying finance, networking with each other.
Cool. Okay, so that was good. But why were there other kind of sophomores trying to do the same thing as you?
So my I feel like my school was very accounting focused, and while I had taken accounting courses, I knew it was not for me. Um, I always wanted to do something, more strategic and business oriented. And frankly, I wasn't getting A's in accounting. Um,
Okay.
I feel like a lot of my peers in classes around sophomore year, you do have to choose your specific major within the business school. So a lot of my peers had already taken internships at big four accounting firms,
Mhm.
whereas I knew that path was not for me. And I was exploring more corporate finance roles.
So you didn't even have a 4.0 from a non-target. You had a three something.
No, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And what was that, around mid three? Like it was only your sophomore year, so you only had like 3 semesters, but were you like mid threes?
Yeah, I would say I was like getting B plus A minuses, but definitely did not really excel in college courses until my junior and senior year when I was only taking finance classes and when I like became obsessed almost with finance.
So then you're like Wall Street Oasis every day, all day. Just kidding.
Oh yeah.
So okay, so you're basically coming up. You make a good connection before the interview. That's a huge help. How many people do you think were applying to this role, and then how many interviews do you think they did, and then how many did they take? Like, what was the conversion for you?
Yeah, I mean I would say well I know I was the only sophomore in the program
Mhm,
amongst within my small group within corporate finance.
mhm.
And then there was one other junior who was selected from my school within the program as well. So it was a pretty small group that they took, and if I had to guess, at least 100 people applied. Maybe there were 20 on this super day, and then kind of had a final round after that. I would think maybe
That's
around
from
five
your
people.
school or from all the schools, you mean?
Yeah, from my school.
From your school, wow. Yeah, okay. And so then you get selected. What do you think set you apart in that kind of very rigorous? I mean, were people kind of in the interview once you got in the first round where they'd be like, why are you even here? You're a sophomore? Did anybody ask that, or were you
Mm,
able to kind of?
yeah, I mean, I think I it really came down to two things. One, just doing my homework on who was interviewing me and making a really good connection during the interview process with my soon to be hiring manager.
Mhm.
I think I was able to, figure out exact what projects she was on just through my investigating skills on the web on online and through their website. And I was able to just really convey also my passion for the group she was in within this large healthcare company and really just talk through the industry almost. And I think that theme has also carried throughout later in my career as well. So almost less about the technicals or anything like that, and more just about conveying passion and connecting really, really well with your hiring manager.
So you talk about doing research prior to the interviews and stuff like that. So obviously you looked them up on LinkedIn. This LinkedIn was getting big at that point, or is that what you did? Or then obviously you were looking on the website, the company website, and trying to figure other stuff out. But was it you said corporate finance? So were they doing any acquisitions? Was it just more like internal finance type stuff, or what?
Yeah, it was more growth oriented projects within the firm.
Hmm.
And so I was able to kind of figure out, what team she was on and who her boss would have been. And then I found, news articles that her boss was quoted in about specific projects they were working on and new initiatives and partnerships and kind of backtrack that and was able to see maybe other people she was connected with on LinkedIn who might have been also quoted in these articles. So a lot of creative research here, but
Now,
um, you
once you had that information, how did you not seem like you were forcing it in the interview?
Yeah, I
was
mean,
it just like, did you leave it to the end when they were at saying like, do you have any questions for me? Just to show that you knew what they were up to?
I think I weaved it in pretty early, and in terms of, why do you want this role, and just went
Got it.
kind of straight into my passion for healthcare, and maybe lightly touched some of the projects I knew she was on, and then we kind of were. I was able to really guide the interview and the conversation from there.
So were they impressed with that, do you think? That you
Yeah,
had
I think that definitely set me apart. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, she was my mentor and my champion throughout my internship.
so you do that internship, you get something really great on the resume because you're doing a bunch of like financial models, which is very relevant to your future into your junior year internship, which ended up at a bulge bracket, correct?
Yeah,
So tell me
yeah,
how you landed that because coming from non-target, yeah, you get a good financial analyst role, but it's still not. I mean, you see kids at target schools like sophomore, you're getting into investment banking, right? So you're still, it's not as if it's a sure thing, right? So tell me
yeah,
how you continue to build on what you had that summer or your sophomore year coming into your junior year.
yeah. So after my sophomore year internship, I knew I wanted to live in New York City. I'm from New York. I knew I wanted to be in a fast paced environment. I loved my sophomore year internship, but just didn't think that corporate finance was the right path for me. So I knew I wanted to do something on Wall Street. I knew about investment banking. I knew about
Was it
investment
just too
trading.
slow? Like the day to day was just too slow for you?
Um, I think, I think I was like too slow. It's more like it wasn't fast enough or competitive enough, or wasn't really the right environment for me. I think it was an awesome company, but
Hmm.
for the aspirations that I had and continue to have, it just wasn't really scratching that itch.
Okay, got it. Okay, so sorry, continue. I interrupted.
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to do something on Wall Street. I knew about all the jobs, had done all my homework. But I had been taking a class that was the first semester of my junior year. And this was when recruiting was somewhat normalized. Um, and so I was taking a class that was pretty much an initiating coverage report. And I just completely fell in love with it. Like the whole idea of being an expert in something at 20 years old was the most attractive thing in the world to me. I called research analysts, I called into earnings calls, like found the job for me almost.
Mhm.
So I only interviewed starting in the beginning of my junior year for equity research roles.
But how do you even get those interviews if you're coming from a non-target school? I mean, there were there a few firms coming on campus or zero?
Yeah, so I was lucky. There were a bunch of alum from my school who just had been really successful in their niche coverage space. So
So
there were a few in
equity research
healthcare.
in particular.
Yes, equity
Got it.
research in particular.
Okay.
There was one bank that there were, I think, three or four very senior, highly ranked people
Cool.
at a few banks. So I was able to really target them, connect with them really well. I applied
You
to a
got them on the phone?
Yeah, I got a few of them on the phone. I had met a few in person as well. My school did a similar, not a female forum, but a Wall Street forum in the beginning of the year. So I was able to attend a panel with a bunch of research analysts, and it was great. Um, I was able to also apply to, the few sales and trading type of opportunities that did come on campus, would interview with them, would sound really good, and then say, you know, can you connect me with your equity research division? And I was quite successful at a few firms doing that. I ultimately ended up
So it sounds
at
like you had
the
at least what, three or four first round interviews
yeah,
at bulge bracket banks.
yes.
Wow,
So I
impressive.
yes, I had interviewed
Why do you think you're getting so much traction here? There's so many kids from non-target saying it's impossible. Does it have to do with the fact that you're just like going through like you did the sales and trading interviews to kind of get your foot in the door for
yes.
equity research, right? So like that's kind of interesting.
So I
Um,
did,
how did
I
you
would say,
say that at the end of the interview without, pissing them off or something?
yeah, I would wait till the end of the interview and they would email me back. Actually, I had one bank who said to me, "You sound really good for an equity research role." Just the way that I was able to pitch my stock in the interview.
Hmm.
They were like, "Are you sure you don't want to do research?" I think that was actually for a capital markets oriented role, but pretty
Okay.
much any bank that was coming on campus, I was interviewing with, and because I had a good sophomore internship on my resume, and I was in an investing related club on my resume through my college, I was able to get at least a first round, and I
That's
would say
smart.
I
You
did.
didn't limit yourself just because if it was sales and trading or capital markets, you were smart enough to say, let me just take the interview, make the contact.
Yes, definitely, and I
But you
think
were you were
that
but you were dead set on equity research. Is that accurate to say? Or
yes,
would you have taken a sales and trading if you didn't get the equity research?
um I was really, really my heart set on research.
Okay.
And I would say I took every interview very, very seriously and did my research and my homework. But say half the interview, regardless, is behavioral and they're going to ask the same questions. So it's really good practice.
For
Any
sure.
any interview you can get.
For sure. Sorry, go ahead. So you went through all of that. You got about 3 to 4, and what happened?
Yeah, and then I ended up at the firm I did. There were this had the most alum from my college there. They hired, let's say, maybe one intern from my college a year. So I felt it was a good fostering environment for me. Um, and I was correct. I loved my research role. It was great. I had a ton of independence and was really able to just dive really deep and almost become an expert nerd on the industry that I covered, which was so much fun for me.
Hmm.
Um, my internship, I spent the entire time, and I think this is pretty standard across all equity research internships, is an initiating coverage report. So you spend 10 weeks getting to know your sector. About half of the time, you are um, building out a model. And then half the time you're building a 20, 30-page report on the industry as well as the specific company. At the very end, it was like the last week of my internship, the company actually got acquired. So my report never got published, which was really upsetting to me, but
Yeah.
I was able to join that team full time when I graduated.
Very cool. So were they impressed with the report? It sounds like they were impressed with the report. What was the conversion rate for? They said they took one from your school, but was it like a group of 10 interns in the equity research group, or 20, or what was it like?
Yeah, it's very small. I would say it was maybe 12.
12, and then how many you got full-time offers from that group?
um, Maybe 8, and then they
Hmm.
hired maybe like one or two. There were 10 in my starting analyst cohort.
Got it. So 1 and 2 like laterals or whatnot.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
Okay. So did you feel like that was a pretty typical year for your bank?
I would say it was probably a good year. There were definitely smaller conversions in following internship years.
Interesting. Okay. So you get the offer and you're like, now senior year is a blast. You don't have to worry. So equity research, bulge bracket, the pay, I assume the base is pretty similar to front office IB. Was it like 80 or 85 then?
Yeah, it was around that.
And did they communicate at all like what the bonus expectations were?
Um, no, but I knew it was significantly less than banking just
Mhm.
based on my friends and what I knew about banking, and I was more than okay and very happy with my starting salary.
So how did it play out? Was the bonus, you know, 20,000, 10,000, 40,000, 30 around there? What would you
Oh,
say for the 2 years?
first year, I
Mhm.
think everyone got the same, like around 10.
Okay. Mhm.
And then after that, it's like you're in a pool against all other non-senior analysts, so people who are VPs, associates, etc. And it's really they try and make it very performance based, and there's surveys that go to sales and to clients at hedge funds and whatnot. And, you know, it, it is supposed to be formulaic. I was happy with my bonuses while I was there because I was a strong performer. But I know that it's significantly less than investment banking.
Was that one of the reasons why you started thinking of lateraling, or was it more like, because it sounds like you really love the research, the actual job? What was the thought process of, hey, I want to go to front office investment banking now? Because equity research, you're working, what, 60 hours a week, 70?
Yeah, I mean, when it's not earning, it's like for me, I would get in maybe around 7 or 8 a.m., leave by 7,
Yeah, so about
7 p.m.
60. Yeah, 60-ish.
Yeah, never really working on a weekend. It was very good lifestyle, but I think after working really hard for 2 years, I picked my head up, thought what I want to do with my life, and I think I was just very frustrated with the stock market even a few years ago. Just the way that the stocks were trading didn't make sense to me.
What about now? What do you think now? It's now
Oh my God.
February 8th. So meaning everything was disconnected from value, even in 2018, 19, everything was already still becoming disconnected from fundamentals, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that is probably the number one reason why I left research is just because of my frustration on, I could never see myself being an investor in a publicly traded stock that I thought was an amazing business, because amazing businesses aren't always amazing stocks. And that just is so hard for me to come to terms with, especially as a research analyst.
Tell me how they were ranking the team. So was it something where like you were putting price targets on different stocks and it was like a percent how accurate you were over a certain period of time? How did they even do that?
So like from an internal process, um, it was more um, at least on the junior level, just feedback that you would get from clients and feedback that you would get from
Like
sales and
surveys
trading.
and yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And then from an external perspective, there's two kind of ways in which hedge funds and long onlys kind of rank research analysts. There's an institutional investor magazine ranking that goes out every year, and if you get II rate ranked, that's a good feat for that senior analyst and that team. And then hedge funds and long onlys also allocate broker votes to specific research analysts, saying, our fund is paying your bank X dollars, and I'm paying you this because so and so gave me really great advice, or after earnings she released a note and then called me right away and was able to debrief me really great. So getting that direct feedback was very helpful for
Very cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. I learned something new today. So,
it.
so tell me a little bit about, yeah, I'm definitely not as knowledgeable in the equity research space. So tell me about the transition though. When did you say, you said after 2 years, so you picked your head up after 2 years. Why banking? Why not try to go straight to like a hedge fund? You felt like, oh, it's not for you because like you said, you couldn't be in the public markets.
Yeah, so I went down the hedge fund path and very much was like, this would be a great role for me, but this is not what I want to do for the next 10 years. Like I just will be so frustrated by everything that's going on. So I
Hmm.
went down the path also of looking at long onlys, and also similarly realized that just the value you can add at the junior level is just very limiting. And I think had a lot of the things I was looking for on an investment horizon. But essentially, what I was describing to myself was private equity, and I don't think I realized that until a few years later. But um, I knew I needed some type of transaction experience. The only exposure I really had to any transactions in research was if a company was IPOing, they brought us in kind of last minute, and then we initiated coverage, and that's not really transaction experience. And I also needed to improve my modeling. I was very, very in the weeds of the operating model.
Hmm.
That's really kind of an underrated part of research is the deep dive you get into the companies and really building a detailed operating build. That's something you don't do as much in banking, or at least I didn't. Um, so
I think
I knew
that's
that,
common for equity research. I think that's normal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me how you kind of approach this. You're there for a couple of years. Were you thinking, hey, I'm gonna get promoted here if I stay, or you're thinking this I just need to get out. I need a more of a challenge. Why go to a job that, you're working 60 hours a week, which is already a lot of hours. Why go to a job where you're going to be working 80 to 100?
Yeah, so I think for me, I viewed whatever my next move to be was going to be like, I was in the mindset that this was like going to med school. It wasn't necessarily going to be the most fun, but I needed to do it in order to get to do what I wanted to do. Whether that was becoming more senior in an investment bank, whether that was doing private equity, whether that might have been going to a long only. Regardless, I knew doing something to the rigor of investment banking would give me that experience that would get me there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So how did you approach it? As you're kind of coming up in 2 years, you get the second bonus. Is that you start talking to headhunters? You start talking to people at other banks? How did you even get into the lateral conversation?
Yeah, the team structure also in research is really small. There's one senior analyst and then 1 to 3 associates under the senior. So someone else who was an associate, she moved internally to banking and had a really good experience just from a learning ramp up experience. So I talked to her about it. Obviously, there's definitely pros and cons to banking, but knew that it was possible and something that is attractive as a junior analyst. You know the industry really, really well, which most analysts don't. So after kind of going down the path of understanding hedge funds and long onlys and realizing I still didn't want to touch a stock, I went to not the head of research, but someone very senior in the research department and said, hey, I want to move in, I want to do investment banking. Like I had already been flagged as a top performer in research, was definitely on track to being promoted. I was on track for having my own coverage. It was a very good experience for me, but I was just ready to do something else. So internally, they had conversations, and while they knew it was going to work and be a good transition, they didn't want it to happen right away. There was kind of a hiring freeze going on, and there are a lot of moving parts happening within research. So they wanted me to stay in my spot for just a little bit longer. So at that time,
Did they say 6 months or a year, or what did they say?
No, yeah, they didn't even really give a timeline.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, you'll be able to do it, but just hang tight kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It had worked before, there was a need for it on the banking side, but on the research side, I think they really needed me to stick around just for a little bit longer, which is totally understandable. I just was getting a little impatient.
Fair.
So I looked externally. I had a friend who was in banking in a different group at the bank I ended up eventually joining, and she told me the consumer retail group was hiring. It was just a really good timing for me. So I had a few phone interviews with like VPs, nothing challenging to be honest. And then I went in for Super Day. I brought my initiating coverage report, which was like 100 pages, and printed it out, like threw it on the desk, and we were just able to talk through the sector. And it was more of a conversation and discussion about the industry and less of a hard interview.
What were the doubts? Did they push you a little bit on your financial modeling skills or your accounting skills or anything about like the hours? Were they concerned about?
I think I expressed that I was confident that I'd be able to ramp up. I was able to ramp up quickly in research by taking on more coverage. I think the modeling piece was definitely a question mark. And I was able to lateral in as a second year analyst. So
Oh, that's great.
typically people take maybe a 2 year step back, but I took like a 1 year step back.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah. Able to negotiate that. And I think it made sense just by the amount of knowledge I knew in the space. It just made sense.
Cool. So you make the transition. So it sounds like it only took you a month or 2 months before you were kind of jumping to the new bulge bracket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say the interview process was finished within maybe like 3 or 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had told me, we want to bring you on board, but I never got a formal confirmation on my offer. So it's kind of like hanging out all summer waiting for my formal offer. Luckily it was not very busy at work, so I was able to have a pretty relaxing summer, and then got the offer and joined early that fall.
Nice. And then, so tell me about that transition, because I think there's other listeners that may have to go through it. So tell me, what was the easiest thing, the hardest thing?
Yeah, I would say the transition was honestly harder than I expected, and not even at all from like a actual workflow perspective, and just more of a team dynamic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I was used to really working with only one person as my boss, and it was a very efficient process. My ideas and of writing research reports and everything was very efficient and very much like respected as a top performer. I'd already been in the bank for 2 years, and coming in, they didn't necessarily really know me, or I had to reprove myself, and it was maybe a little bit frustrating. And just working with so many people in between me and the boss was confusing to me, and very inefficient.
Like having an
Compared,
associate and a VP and potentially a director, and then before the MD.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just very, very weird for me. And that was the biggest adjustment. And then also just dealing with so many different personalities. I think everyone.
Who was the worst? Who was the worst personality?
I mean,
An associate,
I think
your direct associate. It's the worst. An MBA that came out of HBS or something, and I can tell you that was my worst.
I would say I think I worked with all really nice people. Like all the analysts and associates in my group were really, really nice, good people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when people get overloaded and jammed with work, then it's really hard, regardless of whatever job you're in, but it's really hard to just manage your different workflows and working with so many different people.
So you were struggling with that, it sounds like, in terms of pushing back, or like, so you quickly like ramped up to 80, 100 hours a week. And was it because you hadn't been dealing with all that crazy inefficiency before that you were having trouble with it, or you're saying something else?
I think it was just more just working with so many different people who maybe I didn't mesh really well with. Like I was on such a good team and research that
Mm-hmm.
I just clicked well with my boss. I clicked well with the other people I worked with. And it's not so much that I didn't click well in banking. It was just like juggling and working with so many different people was new to me. And
there are some rude people probably, or really tough VPs or directors that you work under. I get it.
Yeah. And not the most fun projects that I was on. I was hungry and ready to be on deals, and I was just a lateral second year, and definitely was not on the most fun.
They're throwing you on a bunch of pitches. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, not the most exciting work I was doing right away, and just very frustrated and
pay your dues again.
Myself.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So how many hours were you working?
Yeah, so I would say in the beginning, when I was working on just like not fun projects, it was maybe around 70, 80 hours a week. And then as things got more busy, like I would say, and right before COVID really hit, like this time last year, I was put on like 3 or 4 live deals.
Wow.
And things really got crazy. And I cover the retail consumer space. So during COVID, everyone was either doing really well or really bad, and we had to act really efficiently as a bank to help our clients, and it was just an all hands on deck situation. And things definitely got crazy. Working over 100 hours multiple weeks in a row definitely wears you down.
And then at that point you're work from home, right? When you get Is that what prompted the quick promotion? But I guess you were a second year analyst, so it's a straight analyst associate promote. Was that typical? Were they handing out a lot of promotions to analysts, second year analysts, trying to keep you?
Yeah. So the the group that I'm in or was in typically does promote analysts after 2 years, and we found out if you were getting that promotion or not, and certainly not everyone got that promotion. Probably
even with how busy the team was.
Yeah. So we got.
I would have thought they would have just been like, everybody, even if they're horrible, just come along for the ride. We just need anybody,
Yeah.
No, but okay. So you're saying that some of the second year analysts didn't get that offer, and that was during COVID, right? Or right.
That was like right before COVID. I want to say in early February. We got communicated if we were getting promoted or not. And, I was really excited and thrilled to take the promotion. I had not started recruiting at all. I was not ready or in the mindset or had the experience to
you were just
really
finally getting on live deals a year in, or 9 months in or whatever. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. Why do you think it took so long to get on some live deals? Was just not enough deal flow to go around, and because you were lateral, you kind of got stuck with the stuff and no one else wanted to do at first?
Yeah, so I think it was a combination of I was staffed. So the way the staffing really works is you're staffed on clients, not necessarily deals. So I was staffed on a client that might be doing an IPO or might be doing, needing a refinancing, but the main project was this more annoying task that we had to do, like evaluation work, and it was not like the sexiest job, but it was right. It was really important for the relationship and took up a ton of time. So it was hard for me to be on something else that would
like valuation work. What do you mean?
Yeah, it was pretty
just
much
like keeping them up to
work.
date every month or something, like with something.
It was more valuation of their portfolio companies applied to market multiples, and
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get the promotion, or they tell you in January, February, right before COVID hits. COVID hits, everyone goes home. You're now working 80 to 100 hours a week from home. And then tell me, at what stage are you like, okay, get me out of this? Because I think there's a lot of people dropping off. A lot of first year analysts already 7 months in are dropping out, first year analysts, from what we're seeing in the forums. So I'd like to hear, kind of as an analyst associate promote, what it was like for you.
Yeah. So I would say the work from home thing, at least for me, made things way better. Like I had a way better work-life balance from home. And honestly, when COVID, hopefully soon, everything goes back to normal, I hope banks really implement a culture where working from home is okay multiple times a week. I think it does wonders. I think that
because you could do laundry and stuff.
Yeah, it's everything from laundry to cooking your own meal, just taking 30 minutes out of your day to go on a walk. It's just, I think it's really great. And other industries like consulting, or even my friends who work in tech, working from home has been the norm for a while. I don't know why in Wall Street it hasn't.
So I'm surprised you say that, because every associate I talked to during COVID, or it feels like almost every associate, was drowning. So you were still drowning in the sense of hours, but it's just that switch to home was really good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was drowning even
either way.
To be honest, you're going to be drowning either way. It's the dynamic of what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fun to be drowning, but if you can be comfortable in your own home and work efficiently and have a good setup, why not?
Did you have roommates?
I had actually moved back home to my parents for a little bit and then moved back to the city with my boyfriend. So we're both working from home. We both work in finance. There's a lot of we have a door, so it's like a Chinese wall situation. So no worries there.
Yeah, so that's nice because at least you had somebody there to like talk to on a
Yeah.
break or something like that, and you weren't like completely isolated. I feel like I think that's what makes it really tough for some of these analysts who are like just completely isolated at home or they're living with their parents
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. I mean,
It's tough. You're like in
I would
college and you think you're going to like New York, and then all of a sudden you're stuck at home with your parents again.
I mean, look on the bright side, you're probably saving money. Maybe your parents will help cook for you or do your laundry.
Oh yeah,
there's not it's not all downside, but I mean, I think they're definitely missing out on some of the camaraderie and other fun things you do get by just working late hours near someone.
for sure. So you get that promotion kind of in the summer to associate in the middle of COVID. What was the communication like? And then when did you start actually looking into private equity jobs? And how did you approach that? How was that different?
Yeah. So I would say I knew I wanted to do something else besides banking probably around the time I was told I was getting promoted, but I didn't know that timeline. I was open to being an associate for a little bit, seeing how that goes, but I knew I kind of didn't want to be a VP and be a career banker.
Hmm.
Um,
Why did you say that?
so
Just because of what you had seen for that first year?
I was still knew I wanted to do something just a little bit more strategic and long term with companies rather than being reactive, which I think a lot of the times, especially during COVID, it's more reactionary.
Hmm.
Whereas I wanted to be really in the weeds in terms of strategy and operations with companies.
Did you ever think about consulting?
Yeah. I mean, I think that consulting still sounds interesting to me. I think almost in my private equity seat now, I am kind of like a consultant for our portfolio companies,
For sure.
which is cool.
So yeah, so tell me how you kind of, so it sounds like right when they told you you had the promote early 2020, you were kind of already thinking about it. And then tell me how you got to that realization and how you approached it.
Yeah. So I think, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, which was I wanted to continue working in the consumer retail landscape, really only working in a private equity forum with the set of those companies.
Hmm.
And then I also knew I didn't want to be at a big firm like I had been my entire career. I was almost tired of being in a bigger setting. I in high school was in a smaller program where my voice was very much heard, and it was very collaborative, and it's really hard to get that in a bigger setting. So I knew I wanted to do something middle market and consumer retail focused. So after connecting with every single headhunter known to man, I had flagged to them actually, probably like this time last year, saying, "Look, these are the only jobs I want. Please contact me when they become available." And I knew I wasn't going to really be an on-cycle type of candidate. I was an A to A promote. I have this interesting background. I don't have that much experience in banking. So I was really looking for a unique opportunity. And so I started interviewing probably over the summer, like late summer, with firms that maybe wasn't like super, super exactly what I wanted. I'd stopped being super picky, but just kind of wanted to get some reps in once I was able to add some deal experience, even though nothing had closed to my
Did
resume.
did your specificity early on of saying, I only want, retail focused funds, do you feel like that hurt you or helped you? Because it sounds like you still were able to get interviews in the summer for more generalist private equity positions.
Yeah.
Um, but tell me, do you feel like that hurt you initially?
So I would say probably initially, like there were just less specific consumer only type of funds. They're just way more generalist positions out there.
Yeah.
So probably wasn't getting a ton of interviews because of that. But then over the summer, there was a firm that invested in a little bit of retail, and I was like, you know what, I'll do this. You know, I'll be okay as a generalist. I'll be able to eventually silo into retail. It makes sense.
How did you go back? How did you go back to the headhunters and say, just kidding, open it up?
No, I mean, I was able to say, look, like I looked at this company's portfolio. I think they align with what I'm looking for if it's possible to eventually silo. You know, I didn't want to be a VP covering industrials if my passion really lied with, you know, consumer.
Okay. So you got a few reps in, which is always good in the summer.
Yeah. So I was like really nervous about these interviews, and I would say that they were not the sole way I prepared for even the basic interviews was the Wall Street Oasis prep pack. I think there's a ton of, you know, very intense LBO models on your investment banking team drive that goes around to everyone. But that's almost not, that's the wrong place to start. I think, especially coming in as a lateral, the LBO models that your team provided was perfect for me. You know, just step by step, like really just walking through how to do everything. Even though I had been doing LBOs in my job, like in banking, it's still not really what the interview process is like.
Yeah, you still got to get the reps into and just practice it a few times. There's like the paper LBO, then there's the 1 hour, and then the 3 hour crazy ones. But yeah. Did you find that? I guess tell me of how many private equity processes or how many first round interviews did you have, and then how many of those do you feel like did you end up getting like second round or modeling tests or stuff like that? I'd be curious to hear those numbers.
Yeah. So I was very picky with who I interviewed with, and I think because of that, I was very successful in almost all my interviews because I was able to just view my passion for the industry.
Yeah.
So
that's the advantage, right? That's the advantage. So I was asking you, was it a big disadvantage? Because I guess once you hit the right fund, it's just like, I've been waiting for this exact role for a year. Like you have to give it to me now. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that goes, I mean, at least for me, when I knew exactly what I wanted to do, it just made sense for me to really target those types of firms. So that first process that I was in, that was like a generalist role, but they did some retail, you know, that process went really, really well. And I was taking that more of a, let's get some reps in type of experience, but would be really happy here. And, you know, I think that was a really good start for me. Definitely got my confidence up that I was able to do this. Really, I think once you start going, you realize that you can do it and it's not that hard. I think getting to the point where I was even comfortable submitting my resume was a harder leap. If that makes sense.
You know, I've had funds that we've worked with on a recruiting side, like McKenna, be like, we only want females, or say we need female applicants. There's not enough. Do you think there's something there? Because from my perspective, when we saw the candidates coming in, it was almost all men. And I know that banking, it's obviously skewed more to men, but it's not that skewed, right? So maybe it's just a WSO thing, but I was surprised, like it would be 1 in like 20 applicants. And I know there's probably a lot of investment banking women that want to be in private equity. I don't know. Do you think there's something there where they're just like, don't want to do it, or they go somewhere else instead, or they want to get out of finance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm actually the only female at my current firm.
That's my point. It's super underrepresented. It's less so at the banks now, right? Because they have a lot more of those programs. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like just talking to your friends who are in banking, because you said a few times, I had my friend and she blah, blah, blah. So I'd be curious to hear what they did.
So a lot of my friends who have been in banking and then left banking, and my group is very female dominant. I think that it just also the consumer retail industry does also just attract more women than other industries. And our group head was we had a lot of senior women in the group, which definitely also helped attract women talent. And a lot of the people that I have seen leave recently have done things, you know, like corporate development. Someone went to a VC firm. it's all within the normal realm, but a lot of people have actually stayed within banking. I think that the culture, at least in my group, was very supportive and a very good place to grow as a female in the banking industry. I would love to see more women and on the buy side. I think that goes also in the hedge fund and long only world. I don't know why there aren't more women.
Are they applying in a lower rate? Meaning, if you had 10 and 10 men, like out of the men in banking, I'd assume like 7 of them apply or trying to get private equity. How many of the women do you think are trying to get private equity? Like 4, 3? You think that's almost like half?
The female bankers that I've worked with, some people do want to do private equity, and I think their process is just running on their own timeline. I think a lot of people are also happy in banking. I think also, I don't think private equity is super different than banking. I like it a lot more, but I think people might be, not looking for banking 2.0, and maybe women just pick up on that.
Like the lower middle market, it's not. And I know you haven't been at least.
Yeah.
I worked in a middle market fund. It was an amazing job when I was at Tailwind. It was really interesting. I was working probably 60 hours a week, but interesting work. So for me, it was great. But yeah, so there are the banking 2.0, but that tends to be the more the mega fund from what I can tell. But
yeah, I would say my firm is too small to like waste resources on banking 2.0, which I've really appreciated, and I'm really enjoying my current role.
Well, I know you got to run, so I'm going to let you go. But is there any other last words of wisdom before we call the pod?
Yeah, say even when folks are feeling, down or having a hard week or a hard few weeks, stick with it. It's not going to be forever this tough. Speak up if things are getting super hard. I think that banks in particular are looking to improve culture. So if things are getting really rough, just raise your hand and things will get better.
Awesome. We'll leave it at that. I think that's mental health is important during this whole saga. This last year has been pretty rough on a lot of people. So hopefully some of the analysts can make it out the other end without like just leaving with no backup. But yeah, I always say like if it's much better to just raise your hand and say I can't do anymore rather than just quit. Or just say I need a week 100%. Off. I need a week off, or I need to be out. I'm sick. Whatever. Just do something. Because if they're working you that hard, it tends to really protect you because they really need you.
Yeah.
Also, so like keep that in mind. So okay, we'll leave 100%. We'll leave it there. Consumer investor.
Patrick.
Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.